before we get started, let's introduce everyone in this meeting. Sandra Brock. God. Sorry. When I call your name, please confirm that you can hear me and by verifying that you are present. Starting with the commissioners, Patrick.
Here, and I can hear you.
Thank you. And John.
Here, and I can hear you.
I'll go to staff next. Leah.
I'm here and I can hear you.
And Samantha.
Present.
And so I'll go through the speakers. Now, not all of them may be on, but I'll call out the list and we'll see who is here. Scott Goddard.
Hi, this is Tim McGuire. I'm here on behalf of Goddard Consulting for Scott.
All right. Thank you. Karen Gonzalez.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Brian Waterman. He may not be on yet. Okay. Jean Christie. All right. And Paul Chisholm. And Norm Hill. I think Norm got off.
Right.
Okay. Let's continue on. This open meeting of the Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely via Zoom, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to COVID-19. The order suspends requirements of the open meeting law to have all meetings in publicly accessible physical location and encourages public bodies to hold meetings remotely with reasonable public access. Information for the public is provided on the town website. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. As chair, I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will invite each commissioner by name to provide any comments, questions, or motions. After the commissioners have spoken, I will allow public comment, starting with those received in advance of the meeting, followed by real-time comments or questions typed by participants in the chat feature. Anything typed in the chat feature needs to be addressed to everyone, not any sole individual. Both types of comments and questions will be followed by real-time commissioner and applicant responses. Finally, each vote will be conducted by a roll call. All right, that business out of the way. Okay, it is now 7:18. I need to go. First public hearing. Pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, the Grafton Conservation Commission held a public hearing on Tuesday, April 6th, to act upon a request for determination for the repair of a retaining wall at 44 Brigham Hill Road. The link and access information was posted on the town website. And I believe, who's here speaking to that? Tim McGuire?
Yes, I'm here. Can I do a quick screen share just to show a couple pictures of the wall and such?
It's not going to allow you to, but I have it and I can put it up for you. Okay,
sure. If you just have the RDA booklet there. Yeah, perfect. We can leave it on that. So good evening, everyone. For the record, my name is Tim McGuire. I'm a wetland scientist from Goddard Consulting, here on behalf of Scott Goddard of the 44 Brigham Hill Road LLC. So essentially what we have here is a commercial building on the Quinsigamon River, which you're not looking at. The Quinsigamon River is on the other side. This is just an armored spillway coming from the north there. And essentially there were some stones becoming dislodged and some disrepair to the retaining wall. So there were some repairs that started happening and an excavator on site that was being used to help remove some of the larger stones. And then the town saw the excavators and the work going on site and issued an enforcement order. And as soon as the enforcement order was received, the excavators were removed from the site, and the Conservation Commission was contacted by Scott Goddard in regards to it. And there was a site walk with the conservation agent and the building inspector to check out the site. The building inspector determined that no building permit would be needed to continue this work. So there was no impact to the channel or the bank here as a result of the excavators. Again, they were just being used to kind of assist in getting some of these larger rocks out. And to date, no work has been continued on this. The only work that remains is just to pour the remaining cap for the concrete wall and then any hand mortaring for any of the loose joints associated with that. And this work is exempt under 310 CMR 10.02A2 for activities conducted to maintain, repair, or replace, but not substantially change or enlarge an existing lawfully located structure. So the repairs of this wall, along with all that's left, the capping of the wall, is an exempt activity. So we're seeking tonight a negative determination in order to just finalize the work, again, just capping off the wall and any hand mortaring of loose joints. So that is what we're here for tonight. And if I would open it up to the commission if there are any questions.
Can't hear you, Sandy. You're on mute.
All right, thank you. Because I was still having dinner, sort of. Okay, so I have the section in front of me. And so my question to you is, how is this structure being used to provide electric, gas, water, sewer, telephone, telegraph, or other communication services, as the sentence says? It has to be service of the public or any of those utilities. How does this retaining wall meet that standard? There's an and in the sentence, so that's pretty, it's pretty straightforward that these are for utilities.
Sure. Well, it's not associated with utilities per se. It's just holding up the parking lot there for the commercial building. And any damage to that wall, would result in more serious impacts, associated with the parking lot. And
Right.
Here, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said I don't really get caught up with the fact that, with this particular, your reference to say that it's exempt, because to me it's pretty clear that it's not. But I don't think we want to get totally hung up on that until we get further down the road, because based on what you're doing and what you have left to do, we should continue with the RDA, just so that we may still vote to have a negative determination. Let's talk about it, because you basically are repairing a retaining wall. You're not doing, please correct me if I'm incorrect, but you're not doing any work within the channel or within the resource area.
That is correct. We're not doing any work within the resource area. Again, the only machines that would be coming in through that parking lot to the east there that you can see in those pictures. No impacts to the resource are proposed. And again, this repair is to prevent any further impacts to the resource area.
Yeah,
And again, this isn't, just in case I wasn't clear, what you were looking at in those pictures that this retaining wall is on is not the Quinsigamond River that's shown on the USGS. That's on the other end of the parking lot there.
Right.
So this is just the armored spillway.
Okay. Leah, do you have anything to add to that?
I consulted our peer reviewer on this one, and he had a different interpretation. He thought that he interpreted the retaining wall as being the bank of that intermittent stream channel. So he said that in that case, work is being done in a resource area. So I did lay out all the options for the commission in the agent report. Because there's various ways to proceed here.
Right, yeah. So, so what Leah has done for us, Tim, is to kind of say, here's all of our choices. And so what we as a commission need to do is just understand the extent of the work so we can make a decision. So I'm going to first just poll the rest of the commission to see if they have any other questions. So Patrick, do you have any other questions?
I guess nothing at the moment really to add.
John, do you have any other questions?
So the work that's being performed is to maintain the wall along the parking lot and potentially repoint the wall. But the question at hand is if it's part of the Quinsigamond River. What's the question and what's the discrepancy?
So the way I would look at it is that if you're, so it's not so much that's in the Quinsigamond River, because the Quinsigamond River would be very straightforward. That wall would be a bank and so forth. This is in an armored spillway to it, so gets a little bit fuzzy as far as as Leah called it, an intermittent stream, because you do see intermittent flow through it. I think you can make arguments in different ways regarding that. It's a structured system as part of it's not the dam or anything, but it's part of the overflow system for the dam. And that's my understanding. Is that, Leah, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So so that's where you get kind of a little bit more grade, is whether that, what that status is. And because if you look at the photos, the wall is much higher than what you would typically, well, I shouldn't say it, what you would typically see in the intermittent stream. But does the water ever come up to the parking lot level?
No, I don't believe it does. The wall there is about 6 feet from the water to the top of it.
Yeah.
But the CMR that you quoted, and the CMR that you referenced here, it specifically points to utilities, and it doesn't sound like it's actually a utility. It's a parking lot retaining wall, is what it sounds like, right?
Yes, I would have to take a closer look at the regulations that were cited in this again. But yes, this is holding up the parking lot. And again, all we want to do is just prevent any further damage to the resource area there, or potential damage, I should say. And all we have left to do is just cap off the wall.
So as a wetland scientist, do you consider that BVW, or is that an intermittent stream?
I wouldn't consider it BVW. I didn't see, at least on the side where the retaining wall is, there's no wetland vegetation. And there on the other side, I'm not sure what the soils are. I would have to take a closer look at that. But those would be the determining factors in it being BVW.
Yep.
It is, it's a clear armored spillway in that. But no work in order to cap off the wall. We're not going to need to access through the intermittent stream or anything, or through the spillway. We're not going to have to, put any machines in the woods over there. All the work is going to happen right within the footprint of the existing parking lot there, as it has.
Okay. And so the other part, just for Patrick and John's kind of is the way that Leah set this up, which is really nice, is that, there is the positive determination, which would require them to complete a notice of intent and submit that. My only hesitation in that is we're not going to get any more information. I mean, that's it. And then when you go to the negative determination, number 2 is where it says the work described in the request is within the area subject to protection under the Act, but will not remove, fill, dredge, or alter that area. So you're talking about a repair to an existing stone wall. So in theory, it shouldn't, you're not dredging anything, and you're not really filling anything when you repoint a retaining wall. And if it's already a retaining wall and it's going to be maintained as a retaining wall, then you're not really altering it, you're maintaining it. And the next one is talking about work within a buffer zone. It's really work within the resource area. And then the number 4 doesn't really apply. So what we're looking at is either the positive determination or negative determination, and we decide that number 2 is what applies. So those are kind of, that's it. And Leah, do you have anything else to add when you went out and did the site visit? Was there any evidence of stuff down in the resource area? No.
No, there was nothing. There was nothing in the channel. There was no
Okay.
damage from, like they said, they didn't scoop anything with the excavator. They were using it to hold the weight of the rocks. So I didn't spot any damage or anything like that. Just one other point to note is it's sort of a twofold question, because we also have our bylaw, which takes jurisdiction over just about anything wet. So it's almost not a question of digging into 310 CMR as much as it is more inclusive because of the bylaw.
Right. But we also still have the RDA process.
Correct.
Right. And then you
I'm
also,
just-
yeah.
I'm just saying the paperwork is for both.
Right. Yes. Yep. And then you also have the waiver request. And then has that been made?
Oh yeah, so that was another question for the commission. No waiver request was made to do work in the no disturb under the bylaw. So if the commission finds that applicable, then that request would need to be made and that fee paid.
Okay. So as far as, well, before we get into kind of deliberating on this, let me just open it up to the public or the attendees. If you have any questions or comments on this particular request for determination, please use the chat box and please address it to all participants. Please feel free to add any questions or comments to that. Okay. So to me, it's about making some determinations. It's determining if, if this, what we know about this work, is it going to remove, fill, dredge, or alter the area? I mean, that's kind of from the state. That's kind of one question. And the second one would be as far as our local bylaw, whether that a waiver request is needed, and then the fee needs to pay. And the fee is what, $50?
Correct.
Yeah. So I don't know, Patrick, if you have kind of your sense of what you think, because then I think the next step is to kind of make a motion, or also give Tim an opportunity to kind of respond.
Yeah, in terms of the based on the description of the work and the area that it's in, I would definitely be leaning towards the negative determination based on well, the number 2 option, the work being described as not removing, filling, or dredging, or altering the area.
Okay. And John?
Leah, what's the bylaw specifically state for the town of Grafton? Or do we have that available? I don't want to make you repeat the whole law here, but if the law rules over the CMR, then we've got the CMR kind of in our report in front of us, but what does the bylaw specifically state? Any work within that area needs to be.
So the point I was making was that, the discussion was about, is it a spillway? Is it BVW? Is it an intermittent stream? Or what is it? And the point I was making was that the categories in our bylaw are a lot more broad and cover just about any water in town. So whether or not we say it is a certain classification under 310 CMR, I think it still triggers an RDA under the bylaw regardless.
And so our bylaw mirrors the kind of the procedural part of the state, but what it does do, it gives us broader jurisdiction and has a couple of other components in it dealing with some other things that, are requirements. The biggest example that we run into, which is also applicable here, is the 25-foot no disturb. So obviously you can't do this work without being within the 25-foot no disturb, and then so that's where the waiver request comes, which seems very reasonable to request that, and then to grant it, because you can't do this work without it. I mean, that's fairly straightforward. And then the other is just paperwork of when you do a request, that's a request to the commission. We would vote on that waiver separately. So.
So a couple things to start with.
Yeah.
Just reading through the town's bylaw, the language under the jurisdiction section does state that, except as permitted by the commission or as provided by this bylaw, no person shall remove, fill, dredge, build upon, or alter any of the following resource areas. And then it does describe, as you say, anything wet essentially. But just to reiterate again, we're not planning to remove, dredge, build upon, or fill anything. We just kind of want to finish this retaining wall so that it doesn't provide a safety hazard, and does end up resulting in impacts to the resource area. So that's what I've read here in the jurisdiction of the bylaw. And my question in regards to the waiver, would you be able to issue a negative determination kind of with a condition that extra $50 waiver fee be paid? Or would that be something that we would have to come back with and, delay the process to another hearing, prevent any repairs to this wall, and, come back with that fee and waiver form in order to get permission to fix this?
So Leah, we've done a conditional one before, right? We won't release the paperwork.
Right, that's how I would do it. I would issue a negative determination pending receipt of the waiver request and fee.
Right. So we would actually do the vote tonight on granting the waiver. And then we would have a vote to issue a negative determination. And one of the conditions would be that waiver and fee needs to be submitted prior to that. So yeah, we wouldn't, trust me, we don't want you to come back as much as, as you don't want to have to come back for something like this. It doesn't make sense. There's no benefit to anyone for us to do that. So, all right. So I think I have not seen any comments, questions, or anything else from the public. I think both Patrick and John. So Patrick, anything else to say?
No.
John?
Yeah, I'm just getting caught a little bit up on the wording of some of that. Tim, you left out the word alter, and although you're repairing, I don't know if there's a difference in the letter of the law between repairing and altering. So maybe that's part of that conversation that we have here. Sandy, I don't know if you have a thought on that.
Oh, it's a really good question, is what it is. So, we could spend a great deal of time on this. So I'll give you kind of my abbreviated interpretation, and Leah can jump in on this. So to me, when you maintain something, you can't maintain something without touching it. However, if you change the characteristic of it, the function of it, so if you have a retaining wall where it's a stone with, it's a masonry wall, and you need to repointing it isn't altering it, it's repairing it. If you decided like you're going to replace the cap on top, but instead of just doing the cap, now you're doing a cap that's, I don't know, I'm going to exaggerate here. The cap is going to be 6 feet high and is going to act as something else, another function or something. We're not doing that here. So it is a really good question, because this time I think it's for this particular project where they're really trying to repair something and maintain it versus altering. You will get into conditions where that question really it's not as easy. It's not as straightforward. So it is a really good question, because there is a difference, and there is kind of, to me, kind of an important legal distinction between the two. So I don't, Leah, if you have anything else on that.
Nope.
Yeah.
Just if I might, point of clarity, we are, I believe you did make it clear, but we are not planning to increase the height of this by 6 feet or do anything substantial. We are just want to pour a cap on it.
Right. Yeah. And I'm just using that as an example, but yeah. So, but it is a really good question. Because then we'd be having a lot longer discussion. We probably wouldn't be talking about a negative determination. So, because we'd want to have a lot more information, to be quite honest. So,
How did this scope of work come before the the commission. So this was started and then spotted by Leah or somebody else. So this was started without an approach to the commission in the first place. So I'm assuming they didn't
Correct.
think needed the permission to start it, even though it was in the no disturb, right?
That is correct, but as soon as we did receive the enforcement order, all work was immediately stopped. Machines were removed from site, and we went through the proper channels and filed the RDA, and haven't done anything on it since.
Okay. I don't have any further questions, Sandy.
Okay. No, that's great. Yeah, this is perfect. These are the discussions we need to have, so it's good. Still seeing nothing from any of the public. So the first thing that we really need to do is to vote on on the waiver to do actual work within the no disturb zone first. So do I have a motion regarding that?
A motion to grant the waiver pending the filing and receipt of fee for that.
A second.
Second.
I will do a roll call on the vote. Patrick?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries. So one thing, Leah, that I want to do, and you tell me we could just make this part of the RDA is to make a finding that, that the activities are not exempt, just as a finding. So to make it clear. So just so that if anything else happens and they need to do more work on the wall, they'll have to come back. We just want to make sure that that's clear. I don't think when we make a motion on the negative determination, we can do that. Other than making that motion, Lee, is there any other housekeeping things that we should clean up?
Nope.
No, if I might ask, does the town have a specific waiver request form on the website, or is something just kind of under our letterhead stating that we are requesting the waiver plus the $50 check?
It's one of the questions in the RDA packet.
Okay. And it is a $50 check?
Correct.
Okay, great.
Yeah. All right. With that housekeeping done, do I have a motion to issue negative determination?
I'll motion to issue the negative determination based on the discussion that the work and decision that the work described in the request is in an area that is subject to protection, but will not remove, fill, dredge, or alter that area. Noting that it does require a filing of notice of intent.
So it's the negative determination means we are not filing a notice of intent. So just as a point of clarification, based on what you said. So
yeah.
Do I have a second?
I second that with the correction that Sandy just made.
Okay. So we have a motion and second. Do a roll call. Patrick?
Yes.
And John?
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries. So, just get together with Leah and the staff and work out the other thing, and then I think you'll be all set.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, everyone. Have a good night.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, seeing that it is past 7:30, pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, the Grafton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon a request for determination for tree removal at 71 Sunrise Ave. And who's present for that?
Hi, my name is Karen Gonzalez. I'm the owner of 71 Sunrise Ave.
Good evening. If you want to just give a brief description, then we can keep on going here.
Sure. Like we said, I own a property on 71 Sunrise Ave. The back of the property is all upon Fisherville Pond. In the plot plan, the site plan that you're seeing right there where the X's are, I have a series of large overgrown trees that are diseased. that are basically splitting and falling onto the property almost near my house. I'm looking for the commission to review and issue a negative determination to remove those trees. Right now, based upon what's happening the last two storms, more of the branches have come down. I did have a arborist come in and take a look at the trees. He said that all of them are diseased and there's no way to save them. And if they don't come down, they'll actually come down on the house at some point. So I'd like to prevent that hazard and request to get those removed. In order to remove the trees, they would have to do it with a crane. The goal is to remove the trees and leave the stumps as to not disturb any of the soil, the dirt, or erosion, because I am in that 25-foot zone. I did send some additional pictures. I don't know if we could bring those up. You could actually see the trees themselves.
Just give me 1 second.
Okay. And then there's some cutback of some other ones that are growing towards the house that would be done within that same scope of work. So you can see at the top of this one, the large branches have broken and they're now sitting on the other one. The other one had split and that one's just waiting to come down. Those are near the back of my deck. If we flip to some of the other slides, two of the trees are over my shed.
Like this one right here?
I think there's a picture with the one with the shed in it. If you go to, that's one of them. Yep, those trees on the left are over the shed. If you go one more, I think to the right, that shows where one of the trees in the middle split all the way down. So I'm just waiting for that one to come down. And then you'll see one of the other pictures that shows some of the disease of the trees close up. And then one of the other pictures shows that what's happening is not only are the branches coming down, but all of the bark. The trees are getting stripped. So all of the bark is actually just flying everywhere, debris right now as well.
What kind of trees are these?
They are red oak.
Okay. All right.
It's unfortunate because they're beautiful trees. They're not blocking anything as far as like view. It's just, I don't know what happened. I've only owned the property for, I think this is my 4th year. And it really only started to get really bad over the last year. And then this year I noticed it got significantly worse. And that's when the large branches started to come down.
I totally understand. I mean, it's not something you want to do, but it's a safety issue. So
Yeah, exactly.
Understand. So, so based on that, I will do a quick poll of the commission to see if anyone has questions or comments. John?
No, I don't have any questions or comments.
And Patrick?
No.
Okay. So the first thing we need to do is do a motion for the waiver.
Correct.
Do I have a motion?
I'll motion to grant the waiver for work within the notice term.
Second.
I have motion and second. So do roll call. Patrick?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
I am also a yes, and that motion carries. I will open it up to the public if anyone has any comments or questions on this request for a determination. Please put it in the chat and we'll be happy to respond. And then you've already stated that you were going to leave the stumps in place. That would be a condition of a negative determination. You already understand a negative determination means it's the final step. You don't have to do anything else. A positive would be a notice of intent. So you've got that all set. Seeing that no one has made any comments or questions in the public, do I have a motion?
I'll motion to issue the negative determination with those conditions that the stumps remain in place, the debris be removed from site, and equipment be remain out of no disturb as much as possible.
Okay.
Second.
We do a roll call vote. Patrick?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
I am also a yes, so the motion carries, and you'll have negative determination. Good luck. Hopefully you'll plant
Great,
something.
thank you so much.
Yeah, hopefully you'll plant something afterwards, but maybe a different species.
Yeah, all right, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Yep.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. All right. So next up, 745. Pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, and the Grafton Stormwater Bylaw, the Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon a notice of intent application for Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw permit and application for Stormwater Bylaw permit for property redevelopment and construction of a marijuana dispensary at 130 and 134 Worcester Street in Grafton. And Leah, Samantha, who's here for that?
There is Brian Waterman and Bruce Spinney.
Okay.
Good evening.
All right. You have the floor. So Leah can show anything that you'd like
Sure.
that's been submitted, and be my guest.
All right, thank you. Brian Waterman, I'm the wetland specialist with WDA Design Group. Also in attendance is Bruce Spinney with Discerned Cannabis Purveyors, the applicants. The site is located at 130 and 134 Worcester Street. It's comprised of 2 lots. One lot, the easterly lot is 1.46 acres and the westerly lot is 1.96 acres. It abuts the Mass Turnpike right away to the north and west with Worcester Street paralleling the west side of the property line. Excuse me. The property is generally flat from Worcester Street in approximately 150 feet, and then it drops only down towards the Quinsigamond River, which runs along the rear property line from north to south. The property contains riverfront associated with the Quinsigamond River. There's also a FEMA flood boundary at elevation 308 to 309 that's identified on the property. There's a concrete drainage channel that conveys stormwater flows from the Mass Turnpike that runs parallel and onto a portion of the property along the northwesterly property boundary. There are several wetland areas that we delineated. There's a boundary of bordering vegetated wetland that follows along the section of the Quinsigamond River and then turns to the northwest into the site. And that is associated with some of the intermittent runoff from the Mass Pike drainage. And we also identified a wetland area to the west adjacent to Worcester Street. This appears that it was an old soil disturbance area, and it also may collect some underground drainage from several catch basins and street runoff, as there's no curb there. There's 2 intermittent streams. One intermittent stream discharges out of that wetland that you can see. Samantha, do you have the color renderings I sent this afternoon?
I do, and Leah, I think I did put them in.
It might just be a little easier to describe.
If they're not in there, I can go grab them.
That's fine.
Looking now.
So as you're
Alright.
looking, I need to do one thing. I'll be right back.
Sure, thank you.
I have 4 files. Is there a certain one you want first?
I kept the names all the same in case he needed to state which one we needed to pull up.
Yeah, the 2 separate sheets I sent later, I think one says existing, one says proposed, and those are the color ones.
Okay, so the last 2 in there, I think.
Yes, I think that's correct. Excellent, thank you. So the wetland that I'm describing currently is off to the west there, adjacent to Worcester Street. And you can see that there's an intermittent stream that comes out of that. And then to the right is another channel that is a intermittent stream under the local bylaw. So we've shown that, and we've got the 25-foot no disturb zone offset from those two wetland areas. And the wetland to the north there that runs down towards the Quinsigamond, again, that picks up intermittent drainage that's coming from the Mass Pike. It eventually discharges directly into the Quinsigamond River there. The wetland line is outlined in green there. That's wetland flags 1 to 23. And then the wetland up by Worcester Road is wetland flags A through I. We also identified the mean annual high water for the perennial portion of the river off to the north there. So that's pretty much highlighted in that shade of blue along the Quinsigamond River. Art Allen was brought on as a peer review for the town. We walked the site this morning with Art to review the mean annual high water and wetland boundary flags. We made no adjustments. He was in agreement with the flagging as delineated. We did notice on the plan we had in the field that the intermittent stream that goes out of the wetland by Worcester Street, the entire section of it wasn't drafted, and we had a labeling issue there as well. So we fixed that, sent that plan to Art. He agreed with all the changes we made on that. It doesn't really change the offset or the buffer zone, but it was more making it graphically correct and labeling it. So a revised set of plans, which is indicated on this plan, was sent to both the commission and DEP this afternoon. So I don't think Art probably had time to write his report, but we made no changes to the boundary. He was in agreement with the flagging on the site. So that was the only comment, was to straighten up the line work for the intermittent stream and the labeling. So the property contained a dilapidated building or a house on this property, which was permitted and raised in this, I believe, January and February. They're currently rebuilding on the existing foundation. I know there was some concern about machine work being out there now without a conservation permit. Our understanding was there was some agreement to keep machines and woodwork out towards the front as long as work is construction was on the existing foundation footprint. So that is the case now, that I guess everything has been moved to the front to keep it on the existing paved areas out front, and the framing is ongoing. So
not to interrupt you, but we did also discuss the dumpster that was put on the side, which is, it straddles a little bit of the 200-foot. We don't use the dumpster, but we felt, and when I communicated with Leah, that we didn't want to put a truck in there to take it out. We figured we would probably do more harm trying to remove the dumpster and put it out of the resource areas than just to leave it there and not use it.
The way the existing site exists, there's actually, this was a walkout building in the back. So there's a low area there. It acts as a natural catch area. So there's no, Art and I walked out back today just so we could see it. There's no erosion, but we had our survey crew go out and stake the erosion control barrier, hoping that, we can get an order of conditions. We'll have the erosion control barrier put in ASAP. It is staked in the field. The existing topography out here is it's fairly flat until you get to that ridge, and then it drops off considerably. So but right now everything is contained up front, so it's in good shape as far as not posing an erosion threat at this time. The existing site, the riverfront, was subject to historic disturbance as part of the Route 122 and mainly the Mass Pike construction. There was apparently good soil removed from this site, and then it was backfilled to pretty much existing grade. So there had been some historic test pits done in the front of the building, which indicated some bituminous concrete and other solid backfill with soil. And we performed several more test holes where we're proposing infiltration, both for the surface basin and the underground storage. And those indicated a soil fill down to about a depth of 15 to 16 feet. Those soil samples were sent off to Yankee Engineering for composition and permeability testing. And that was utilized in the design of the stormwater infiltration. That was subsequently reviewed by Graves Engineering as part of the peer review for the planning board submittal. So their comments were incorporated into the any revisions or design as part of that permitting process. Samantha, if you could switch to the next color rendering, which is the proposed site plan, the grading plan. Yes, thank you. So this plan, this is the proposed grading and drainage sheet. I figured that's, shows the maximum extent of whatever earthwork and other items would be going on. So the red dash is the 25-foot no disturb. The short blue dash to the north is the 100-year flood boundary. The short black dash is the 100-foot riverfront area. And then the long blue dash is the existing 200-foot riverfront area. And the yellow highlight is the 100-foot buffer zone. So again, the proposed dispensary building is the same layout because it's being constructed on top of the existing foundation. After they raised the building, they noticed that the foundation was in excellent condition. It's actually like a 12-inch foundation. It was well built. So the building is the same size and layout as what was pre-existing. The parking was designed, the planning board doesn't allow parking in that first 50 feet. And I think Bruce could probably expand on this, but I believe in the planning board, they said they want to maintain that there's no parking in the first 50 feet. So we had to look at putting the parking back into the side of the building. The rear of the building, the clearing is pretty much what exists today. We're pushing back to the edge of the top of the slope, and that's the limit of work. So we're trying to stay up on the upper plateau, if you will. And then the access drive is part of, I believe, MassDOT's and some other comments. The traffic engineer, it's now one way in on that right-hand drive. So that was reduced from 24 feet of pavement to 20. So there was a slight reduction in riverfront work in that area. The catch basins are all deep sump catch basins. They discharge the one to the infiltration system there and the underground infiltration system in the central part of the parking area. That goes to a storm scepter unit prior to discharge into the underground infiltration system. And then there's an overflow, which would go to that flared end and riprap spillway to the north. The other system to the left the surface basin. That is collects runoff in that limited area into a double sump catch basin, and then again to another storm scepter unit prior to discharge into the infiltration basin. And then there's an outlet control structure. If there's enough water that gets in there, that would discharge out to the north. Most of the work is within areas that were previously disturbed. We do have some tree clearing to the right. And I don't have that in front of me. Let's see, sheet. Sheet 2, we have our calculation. So the existing riverfront area on the property is 87,054 square feet. If you want the allowable 10%, that'd be 8,705 square feet. The existing degraded area between the building, the pavement, and the landfill area is 16,000 square feet. The proposed riverfront alteration is 5,776 square feet. So that's below the 10% threshold. And we're proposing to restore 4,700 square feet of the degraded riverfront in addition. So I think, we had submitted that under the 310 CMR 1058, the redevelopment, that we're meeting those standards. We did have a comment late this afternoon from Mass DEP. They issued a file number with some comments. I don't know if you saw that yet. They had a comment on the riverfront analysis that it shouldn't be only about economic, which our riverfront analysis was not only answering the economic proportion, but we said the alternative, if you didn't build on the existing foundation and shifted this building one way to the left or to the south, you're going to be impacting either undisturbed 100-foot riverfront, or you'd be into the town's 25-foot no disturb. And we can't shift it forward because the zoning setback for parking and other things is 50 feet. So I kind of disagree with their comment on the alternatives analysis. And where we're meeting the performance standards under the redevelopment, I think we've met that condition. I guess I can turn it over to you if you have questions or anything for me or Bruce.
Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I just want to extend on what Brian had said for a couple of things when we went through the planning board process, if you don't mind.
Oh, please do. Go ahead.
So during the development team meetings, as we were going through, we originally were looking at 53 parking spaces. We did reduce it down to 48. And then we did not determine what foliage and what restoration vegetation we wanted to put in, but our goal was to provide as much privacy on the site as possible. So we were looking to make sure we fill as much of the land that's kind of open now with vegetation. When we originally took over the site, it had been abandoned for about 12 years, give or take. I'm sure there was people there, but we did a fairly extensive cleanup on the site as well. Because, as buildings get abandoned for years, they tend to be places where people put their leftover couches. There is quite a bit of seclusion behind the building because the pike is on the left. And of course, it's about 30 feet higher than the grade there. And then the Quincy River is behind it. And then Aggregate or McClellan is behind that. So it was an area that was kind of neglected for a long period of time. There was a couple disturbed areas there where I believe probably one of the former businesses used for a dumpster pad. We cleaned most of that up as well. That's in the plans that you have now, and some of the restoration spaces that we're looking to put a little bit more vegetation in. And I think that's pretty much it from the comments we got through the planning board. There was, Leah and Chris both asked for us to look at alternatives for parking. We wanted to make sure while we were attempting to limit the parking in the disturbed area, we also wanted to make sure we had sufficient parking not to disturb traffic too much on the street, which was a primary focus of the planning board's comments, so to speak. So we tried to, be in between, making sure that the neighbors and the people who utilize 122 and then our disturbance area. So.
All right, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I was just going to ask if Samantha could go to sheet C4. That's the planting plan.
That will be under Leah's charge. I don't have control over anything.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Hi, Leah. Sheet C4, possibly.
Or
right. So this is the extensive planting plan. So this is incorporating, as Bruce pointed out, a lot of screen plantings in the front, and then we have areas in the back there, and to the rear of the site, and then to the far south corner there, the right-hand corner, that are the riverfront areas that were lawn right now and fill. And like as Bruce pointed out, there was an old concrete pad that was removed. So we've proposed a significant planting here of native species. They're not Asian longhorn beetle in the list. We're also doing a conservation mix and low growth along with the trees. Some of these oaks are 2.5 to 3.5 caliper, and they're not, small trees that are being put in. There are obviously the 4 to 6 foot height specimens as well, but there's a lot of replanting. There was quite a bit of invasive species on this site. So, there's a big investment on putting in a lot of desirable plant species here. It'll not only screen, but it also is restoring, as we said, like 4,700 square feet of the riverfront area.
Okay, I have lots of questions, and I'll go around to the other commissioners. You kept saying it meets redevelopment. In what context were you talking about redevelopment? I mean, obviously, what was out there, I happen to go by this location a lot, so I've seen it over the years and the different people that came in and out of there and the fact that it was demoed and so forth. So how do you classify this as redevelopment when it doesn't meet what I think of as redevelopment under the Wetlands Protection Act?
Well, it was previously degraded by pavement, the building.
Yep.
And,
so, but you have a tremendously greater amount of pavement than you do in the existing, or impervious than the existing, which doesn't make this a redevelopment. It makes it a new / redevelopment. That's really critical to understand it. And so I'm wondering how you can call this a redevelopment. A redevelopment would be to match the existing imperviousness.
As far as a drainage design, I would agree. If you go through the redevelopment, it says proposed work will result in improvement over existing conditions. I would argue where we're not having runoff sheet flow through those areas. Stormwater management is provided to standards. We're not working closer to the riverfront. We're maintaining a 100-foot undisturbed riverfront area. And we're restoring areas that were degraded.
Okay, so describe to me how they were degraded.
Well, the pavement,
Yep, that's easy.
building, and it's considered an abandoned dumping ground with 15 feet of fill.
Oh, that's how you're doing that. Okay, I'm sorry, I just could not understand what you meant by degraded. But there is topsoil out there, correct?
Very little. There's well, up front there's, as we said, the brick and pavement, but no, if you dig down, it's soil to the surface with some grass on it.
Okay. Yeah, and again, I mean, I'm just looking at, because I'm familiar with the site, and I look at these proposed conditions, and what is your area of impervious going from? I mean, it's got to be triple, at least double, if not triple, what you have out there now.
Right.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
The 10% is the argument with the pavement that goes into the riverfront. With the degraded and what we're restoring, we're under the 10%.
Oh yeah, I understand. That's a bright line that you have to stay under. I understand that, but I just, when you kept saying redevelopment, I'm just thinking,
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't quite fit this. That's not a description I would use for this type of project.
Well, the side from what you can see as far as the building and the existing pavement that's there now is the fill that was dumped on the site, which I said is down to 16 feet.
Right. That's where, because I look at the aerials and I look going by and I see mature trees and I see a lot of greenery and I'm not seeing the fill, but I'm seeing the vegetation. That's what's really I'm looking at.
Leah, could you flip back to the first color sheet, please?
Yep.
Right. If you see the kind of green squiggly line, that's the existing tree line now. So that's,
Yep.
Like I said, in the rear of the building, we're pretty much going to that edge before you draw. Everything's staying up on top of this ridge.
Yep.
That's all filled to 16 feet. And down the slope, there's large, giant chunks of concrete. There's other stuff, but so I don't know how much historically was done on this site. But so everything outside of that tree line, and then there's obviously historic disturbance. We do have some, locust trees and other things, but a lot of the large cottonwood and oak are on that slope. And then the area up front, outside of the tree line that's in the riverfront area there is degraded by the fill. That's what we outlined on that sheet where we said there was 16,000 square feet of degraded. We basically mapped where the soil is outside of that tree line above the ridge line and counted that. I'm sure there's more degraded than that, but that's what we counted because that's where our project is proposed. So.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's just interesting. And you're kind of estimating that fill is from the construction of the turnpike?
Well, that's kind of some of the history. We have a request into Mass Turnpike. You can see they have a Mass Turnpike. There's an easement at the back of that property. I don't know if you can zoom in and see it on that. I guess that was for potential culvert taking or things like that.
Okay.
Because the culvert for the Consigamin River right there is just to the north about 200 feet.
Yep.
But that's kind of some of the history we found is it sounds like there used to be houses along this whole thing. If you look at historic USGS maps, the 59 map to the 53 map, the Mass Pike was not in place right there. And then on the 69 USGS map, it was. And there used to be a row of houses along this strip of 122, and then they disappeared. So we think some of that was the material that was found in the test pits towards the front of the building. It seemed to be more old building material, concrete and brick. And then it looks like the soils mapped on site were loamy sand and gravel. So they may have stripped off the good stuff and then put some of their other soil back in here, which came back as classified as a loam with a permeability rate, but suppose it is still loamy sand and gravel under the 15 or 16 feet of fill. So,
Madam Chair,
if you
also
walk the site, you'll see there's a shallow cover of grass and there's quite a few invasives. And then it drops off. If you walk down that slope, you'll find some of the there's concrete and other materials. There's obviously it's grown up in the 50 to 60 years or more that things have been left alone. But you can see the concrete pad kind of to the right side of the building there. That's kind of the things we're running into. There's, building materials and then trash. But as soon as the excavator dug through the surface layer of grass, it was just into that 15 to 16 feet of fill.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Spinney, you had something to say?
Yeah, just from a building perspective, the building came after the pike, after the fill was put in. We weren't able to confirm any of the rumors, but some of the old historic pictures we had, basically not dumping ground is a bad way to describe it, but the fill came from when they were putting the pike in, they moved it. The foundation is a 12-inch foundation that's rebarred. You don't make foundations like that unless you're putting them in that type of fill type of atmosphere. And it's held up for 60 years because it was 12-inch rebarred reinforced concrete, which is not something you see in a house of that era.
Yeah. No, I mean, sites along the Mass Pike are notorious for having historical disturbance, and whether that's good gravel taking out of it or other things, Phil put it in and so forth. That's what those old easements were for. So, Leah, if you could bring up the drainage map that was colored up.
Sure.
And so some of my questions under the local bylaw, we want to see some, low impact design approaches, some green infrastructure. You got a surface basin and infiltration. Are you doing anything with porous pavement? Are you creating any kind of bioretention? Are you doing anything to kind of meet both the local and the state requirements to put in low impact design?
I think they minimize the travel lanes, keeping vegetation, staying at the top of the ridge line there, doing the stormwater units, doing a large infiltration system to recharge groundwater.
And does your roof runoff go to your infiltration system?
Yes.
And so, but you're not doing any kind of nature-based systems that are there to treat or infiltrate. You're really using pretty old school gray infrastructure to do your stormwater management.
Well, they're the storm tech treatment units and then Coltech infiltrate. I think they're Coltechs. You see, I'm not sure what he put on there.
Yeah, that's fine. It's.
Are you looking for rain garden type things or?
I'm looking for you as the applicant in the fact that both under local and state look for low impact design. So when you talk about reducing, the width of the driveway, that's something. But what else are you looking to do? This is very traditional end of pipe type of system. So that's a question to you. I'm not going to tell you how to design your site.
Right. Well, that's things I can discuss with our engineer and landscape designer.
Yep. No, that's the question. Yeah. So I'll actually let the other commissioners have questions. John, do you have any questions?
So I live up in the airport neighborhood, so I drive by this site, you know, sometimes twice to 4 times or whatever a day, depending on how many times I go to Grafton. It's under construction right now, correct?
It has a issued framing permit. We're
Okay. But
we're building the envelope.
Okay, so it's got a permit that's going to permit framing and sheathing, and you've got a forklift of some kind out there, and probably 6 to 12 cars on a daily basis that are on that site. Correct? Is that correct?
So we originally, yes, we've been kind of monitoring it as when the conservation agent reached out to us, Leah reached out to us to make sure that people were staying on the pavement out of resource areas. And we told them to limit it to 4 cars there to carpool in. Today there was a bit more on it because we were walking the site. There was Ecotech was there, Brian was there. And the only thing that's not on concrete now, or asphalt anyways, is that dumpster. And we just discontinued use of it in case it was a problem.
Okay, that's one of my concerns is the amount of traffic and where, you know, obviously that's tied into the permitting process and the conservation process here. So it's a concern to have that many vehicles. And again, I'm driven by it, and you know, you've got your contractor out there framing and sheathing, and so it sounds like you're trying to remedy some of those situations.
So can I just
Sure.
cut in here for a second? So I saw that the framing had started, and I contacted Bruce and let him know that he's, you know, filed for this work, so he shouldn't be out there doing the work. He told me that the framing started and needed to finish to protect the work that was done. So I said, you know, I'm still going to be bringing this to the commission for you guys' take on, you know, do you want to document it with an enforcement order? Do you want to double any fees because it's now an after the fact filing, or how you want to handle that? I did say to get stuff on pavement that's accurate and out of the resource areas. But I didn't bless, you know, go ahead and continue construction.
Yeah, no, I wasn't trying to allude to that. We were issued a framing permit. We started framing. It got muddy. We started to clean it up, especially out front, which I assume you noticed. And then we made sure that any further work would mitigate any concerns, especially keeping that loader on the hauler, basically that green machine that you see when you're passing by. Make sure that stays, and make sure our wood was staged out of resource areas and on the asphalt. The area of exposed concrete, the one to the right, is where we were kind of trapped, because that's actually where all the plumbing is and all the exposed wood. So we needed to just get it capped and get something over it so we can preserve anything that's in the foundation now. And then we want to get, of course, the erosion control barriers up, and then start with this process. And we had expected to wait a few weeks after this process started before we started any of the actual site work. But we kind of, when we were walking through this over the past few months, going through the planning board process, we used the existing foundation to kind of mitigate our impact on the site. And then try to get something built on that foundation as quickly as possible after we demoed the building. I think, I mean, we were issued a framing permit from the building inspector's office. So we were working under that guidance. And then we're here now. So made sure the site's cleaned up, and make sure we're not impacting. We've spent a lot of time in diligence with, you know, Waterman, WDA, and Brian, and our soil sample individuals to make sure that we're approaching it the right way.
Okay. Because I saw that it sat for a little bit after the demolition. You know, it sat with before it began. So I'm assuming you were waiting for your permit at that point and then
Yes.
proceeded once you got that permit, but you didn't have any DEP numbers, or you didn't go through Conscom before you started that construction because you were working on the building only?
Yeah, we were working inside of the existing foundation. So we were so when we first started, we wanted to get a building permit just to do the building, demo it, put the building back up in place, and then go through the process. Because it's historically OLI, well, that's what it's zoned now, and it was a commercial application. Then at a certain point in those meetings, it was determined that, well, no, it's a change of use because we're going to the cannabis retail. So that changed it from a normal retail operation, which historically it was, to a new classification. So we stopped there and then went through the special permit process to make sure we were allowed to do a cannabis operation there, which invoked the site plan review, which is everything else that we've done in the interim. Once we got our special permit from the planning board and went through that process, we were issued our framing permit. And then we were kind of back to where we were about 2 months before and what we were hoping to do from the inception of the project. All the while we were managing the conservation aspect of it for almost the past 3 or 4 months in conjunction with our actual site plan. So we had anticipated going through these steps already. So I guess we were going to stop at framing and then work our way through the conservation system, so to speak.
Leah, is that your understanding of what you've heard and seen from Bruce and Brian, or like is that what we as the commission understand?
Yeah, I mean, he was issued a framing permit. I should have been notified on that process, like interdepartmental review wise. There was a snag with the online permitting software, so I didn't get that alert. Had that happened, I would have said the same thing I'm saying now, which you're filing for this work, you need your permit from us first too. So there is, a software error, so to speak, there in the process, but regardless, he's filing for the building, so you need the permit from us for the building.
Okay.
We were expecting to go through this process. We weren't trying to avoid anything. We had a set schedule that we were trying to adhere to. That's why the framing permit was the only thing that we actually got. Because we were under the assumption that working under the existing foundation, we would be within our rights. And then, of course, as the dialogue changed, I'm more than comfortable with the approach we took to make sure we mitigated everything without having to leave half a building up, which is not something we wanted to do this time of year.
Anything else, John?
No, I don't have anything else to
add. Patrick?
Not really. The only thing I had was about the framing, and we just talked about that. So that kind of answered my questions.
Okay. Yeah, just the only other, obviously we're at the beginning of this process and we need to we still need some information. I've heard that you said DEP issued a number, but we hadn't gotten it yet. We just got some updated plans, those type of things. It is, you talked about all the fill. Did you guys do, 21E on this? And have you done an initial assessment of all that fill and making sure that it is truly just, I'll just call it waste from Mass Pike and the buildings and stuff?
The soil samples they were performed with our soil evaluator, and they were sent to Yankee Engineering for testing. That's we can get that to you. It was in the stormwater report, I believe.
Okay.
So Yankee's tests are in there, and the soil evaluator's information. So.
Okay, but there was nothing reportable or anything.
No.
Okay.
No. Again, it was a loam. It was tight. I think they had a permeability rate of 0.27 or something, but they classified it as a class 2 loam.
Yeah, 0.27 is a sea soil. That's,
Yeah.
not unusual.
Yeah.
Um,
But no, they didn't identify any petroleums or other things like that.
yeah, just general stuff like that.
But if you need more information on that than what's in the Yankee reports or in a stormwater report, I can certainly get that to you.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, again, I'm not looking for anything beyond just what you would typically look at just because of the type of site it is,
Yep. Sure.
All right. So, we're still waiting on the Ecotech review. And then, my big question is classifying the fill areas as degraded. I mean, off the top of my head, I'm not going to, just a little bit more interested in how Art Allen's going to look at that and whether that's degraded or not. And this is not something that's black and white. When does fill not become fill anymore? It's always classified as fill, but if it's been there for 50 years or 60 years, when does it begin to have characteristics of an in-place soil? That's a whole different question. And that's certainly not my expertise. So I would rely on other people's expertise on that one. I know Graves did a peer review through the planning board, so I just want to read through those letters and see if he had mentioned anything about doing a little bit more LID or green infrastructure, especially because it's partially within a riverfront. Any kind of other outstanding things, Leah, as far as like information that we need?
So I have two questions for the applicant and one for the commission. For the applicant, you mentioned the reduction of the width of the access drive. So are those numbers reflected in your NOI for riverfront calculations? Or did that revision happen afterwards?
That happened afterwards, but it is noted on the plan calculation, which is sheet.
The one we were on earlier?
Yeah, on that table there, it's been adjusted there.
Okay, you might have to revise those numbers with your NOI form through DEP, because when I log on my side to issue your permit, it pre-fills those fields. So you're probably going to need to circle back to them to change those numbers. And then we'll just need a copy of that one sheet of the NOI with the new numbers on it. My other question for the applicant, it's in more of the details we haven't gotten to quite yet, but is fencing proposed in the rear of the site?
Bruce, do you want to answer that?
Okay. I don't know how the commission feels about it, or if you're not ready to get into these details, but I was just going to suggest it be put up at the 100-foot riverfront line, because the disturbance goes right up against it.
All right.
The goal would be to prevent people from walking from the parking lot into the 100-foot area.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's part of it, and the other part is so that you don't expand your operations beyond that. It's more of for us a control of the resource area.
Okay. There is a sizable retaining wall there along the back perimeter.
Okay.
So there's a good drop off, and then there'll be safety measures, of course, taken on the parking lot side.
Okay.
It doesn't lend itself to have people going back there.
So if there's a natural barrier or something that, and again, we're not always strictly, like we said, if we want some sort of barrier, we're not going to always dictate that type of barrier, because to us it's more about providing a visual observation of you're not supposed to go into this resource area. That's the bigger part of it, as opposed to us specifying what kind of fence. That's not really what it's about. We use all sorts of different barriers. A retaining wall actually works pretty well. there's a kind of a safety issue for you guys. That's not really our purview. We're more interested in protecting that resource area than anything else. So,
Yeah, as Bruce pointed out, you have the curb line, then there's a retaining wall. Off the end of the retaining wall, we have a thick row of plantings, and then it drops. I mean, if someone jumped over that retaining wall, they're going down.
Yep.
That
Yeah.
drop 80
Yeah.
feet elevation.
And at some point, we'll have the signage up there, because you don't want dumping. We don't want landscaper coming in and just going over to the retaining wall and dump and so
Throwing
forth.
it,
So,
yeah.
I mean, those are the typical things that we try to do to protect the resource area itself.
Sure.
The other thing too, Madam Chair, is the site's going to be closed to the public and gated at the two entryways outside of operating hours.
Okay.
So that should prevent a lot of the previous problem over the past decade of people going back there and dumping.
Yep.
It's something that we certainly want to make sure that we prohibit.
Right.
The nature of the business is going to provide a fairly secure. I mean, it's 24-hour monitoring. Every square inch of pavement is going to be covered by surveillance. So we'll know if people are actually going on there to try to get back there to dump, even leaf clippings and things of that nature.
Okay. I appreciate that. And, we don't really, I don't say this in good or bad. We don't really care what you're doing on the site. I mean, that's up to you. For us, it's really all about making sure we're protecting the wetlands. So,
Yep.
So for our perspective, my perspective, as you know, I live in town, and so does my partner. We wanted to try to alleviate the concerns of the public and the planning board process of having the amount of parking we do, and then remedying the site as it stands now, which is kind of gross, to make sure that we put as much vegetation in as possible, not only for public and erosion and, from a conservation perspective, but aesthetically speaking, behind that building's gross. And it's gross for a long time. But we need to try to placate both sides. It's a bad word for it, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to get at.
it's a balance. It's
Yes,
a balance. Yep.
same.
And, from my perspective, we have our charge under the Conservation Commission. We try not to wander away from that. We try to stick to that.
Understood.
Leah, you said you had a question for us, or do you have another question?
Yeah, the question for the commission is how you want to handle the work that was done. Is there anything further you want to see there? All that has transpired so far is emails. So I didn't know if you wanted it documented with an enforcement order. I didn't know if you wanted to, it's in our fee schedule that any after the fact filings, the fees are doubled. I just didn't know how you guys wanted to proceed with that piece.
No, I appreciate that. And I think one of the things that, and I'll let the other commissioners weigh in on this, is that I think because of the normal process that we usually go to get notified when a building permit is issued, and you didn't get notified, that's not on the applicant's side. I mean, yeah, they should probably have asked and known, but our kind of fail-safe stuff on our side didn't follow through. So makes me hesitate about changing the fees. So, but let me ask the other commissioner, John.
No, I agree with that thought process. If that had processed through, Leah had said, stop, we need to consider this, or there's other things in play, and you had continued against, that, I agree that would have been egregious, but it sounds like, yes, you should have asked before proceeding, but the fail-safe broke, so it's hard to then hold you responsible for that. So I agree with Sandy.
Patrick?
Yeah, I would agree with the same sentiment. I think that makes sense.
Yeah. And then as far as documenting it, Leah, is the minutes from this public hearing, is that sufficient for documenting it?
Yeah, I mean, the only difference with the paperwork is an enforcement order goes to DEP.
Right. Yeah, I would say at this point, since we're in the middle or we're at the beginning of doing this notice of intent, I think that's probably sufficient documentation. Unless John, if you or Patrick have a different opinion. Sorry for the cat walking in front of the camera.
No, I don't think. My opinion is that she's loud tonight, or he's loud tonight.
He's loud. Yep. He's.
I'm just glad you can't hear my dog snoring over to the side of me.
No, I don't. Based on the facts that have been presented, I don't think enforcement. I think if we document it through the minutes of this meeting, and as long as no work is continuing related to the site, the parking has been restrained. You've attempted to rectify any potential issues there. It's at least that's what it sounds like based on everything you've told us. As long as that continues, and you've got eyes on this property from people driving by constantly. So,
we're certainly not trying to hide anything. It's a tough place to hide anything at this time. If we had not been issued our framing permit, we of course would not have started our framing. The problem came is we ordered wood. It's very expensive, and to have half frame out would be very, very detrimental to us. So we mitigated everything as best we could. I think from what you have tonight, we prepared for this process pretty thoroughly. So we hadn't intended to bend any particular organization. So
yeah, I'm in commercial construction myself, and the price of commodities currently is insane. So we steel, wood, everything. We're hitting it in every market and every market my company's in. So I fully respect that is a challenge. So, but I do, back to the original, I believe that the minutes of this would suffice. Sandy.
Thank you. Patrick.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. So I just want to give you so based on some of the information that we got fairly late and the fact that we didn't know that there was a DEP number, our expectation is you guys will continue the hearing. And of course that request has to come from you. And I think what I want to do is give you some like questions and just so that we can come back and kind of wrap things up as opposed to
Sure.
going on and on, that type of stuff. So obviously Art Allen, and I'm going to ask Leah to specifically ask Art Allen about the fill material and just making sure that he'll be in his report about it being degraded and so forth. I'm just not as sure on that particular detail. We'll get Art Allen's Leah's, is Graves Engineering, is their peer review completed? I know they did it for planning board.
Through planning board, it's done. If the commission wishes to see additional scope, I can request that.
Yeah. At this point, I don't think so. I think the question that I raised earlier about doing some, LID or green infrastructure or some type of demonstration, that would be nice to figure that out. But
I can check the reports
yeah,
we did for planning for any comments to that effect.
Okay. And then, and I think, I know Leah's been out to the site. I may stop by the site, so I just want to let you know. I think when you talk about behind the building, I have a sense of what that was, and I certainly have seen things dumped there over the years. Just take a look at it, so I'm a little bit more familiar with the up close view of that fill material as opposed to me looking at an aerial photo and seeing just green. So I'll probably do that. So
when is the next meeting that you can have us?
Is it 2 weeks? What is
the 20th.
The 20th.
20th.
I'm sure we're with where we're at with the different agencies that we're dealing with, and then the peer review. I don't see that being an issue. If you need a request, can I e-sign it, send it to you tomorrow, and just make a verbal request now, like we did with planning board?
Yep, you can make a verbal request now.
So. The one thing that I would like to ask is if the delineations are correct according to Art. And we have staked out the erosion control. Can we put the erosion control measures out there? They finished the securing the side of the building, but they need to cap it. And then we're kind of like we're done doing anything we're going to do there anyways. But there is a lot of exposed materials there, and I'd like to secure it, get the wood in an area where we can make sure it's not going to get stolen, do all that type of wrap up, so to speak.
Okay. And I think it's, I mean, I don't have a huge issue with that. It's just a little bit hard to figure out or visualize exactly where you're talking about doing that kind of work. And I have no problem putting in, erosion control, around that area and stuff. I don't know, Leah, I guess I'm not quite sure just how big an area you're talking about and so forth.
So if you pull up the existing, I can show you where they need to cap. So if you zoom in to the front, right where it looks like there's kind of a garage.
Yep, on the right-hand side.
Yeah, all that existing pavement is where they're working now. So they don't have to leave the actual driveway as it exists to finish. So there's that area where it says former garage was open and exposed. So we capped it, and then we had the walls. So we just want to secure the walls. So you'll notice this framing going in between the trusses.
Yep.
We want to put the zip on that roof. So it doesn't make it weather tight, but structurally speaking, it makes it work for us. And if it does snow or something next week or the week after, we're not going to have a lot of damage in there. And it would be tough to replace the wood that we actually had already bought. The erosion control perimeter, I believe, is what we would use going forward for the entire project anyways. If what Art had mentioned today is everything matched up between Waterman and Ecotech.
Right. So
it would just, we have to do it anyways. And it's certainly not going to do any harm out there, but it might, just.
And you're looking to do that before you've already said it's generally in the edges of the tree existing clearing areas, but you're not going to go in and remove any trees.
No. But there's no reason to put down 2 erosion control. The way that grading is up there anyways, we prevent any erosion into the river area by going with what the plans delineates as our erosion control. And we already have it staked as well. So we can order it and get it out there quickly.
So let me check with the other commissioners. John, do you have any issues with the erosion control being put in ahead of the permit being issued?
If through the permit process it needs to be revised, then I'm assuming that so if you put it in now where you think it's supposed to go, and then the permit process might revise where that goes, then I would expect that there's no pushback when if we need to revise it. So if that's the case, I don't have specific concerns, but I don't know if that interferes with a bylaw or anything specific.
And that's kind of, I'm trying to think it through as I ask questions.
Oh,
It doesn't sound like a bad idea.
Could Bruce just put a silt fence around, the back of the building there, keep it up close to where he's, buttoning things up, and not take the time and expense right now on the major erosion control barrier? It's pretty flat up by the back of that garage. How about just putting in an entrenched silt fence around there, surround the material area for now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an issue with that. And Patrick, do you have any kind of feedback on that?
Oh.
Patrick, you're on mute if you're trying to talk. Oh, technical difficulties.
Or we can do a thumbs up if you're good with it. we do visual signs occasionally on these meetings too.
Hand signals.
Yeah. So Leo, is there anything that, thank you. Is there anything that would prevent, I'm just trying to think from a big picture standpoint of them putting in erosion control, as long as they're not doing any other kind of earth disturbance or anything else?
I don't see any issue with it, especially if it's going to be something that's, being put in to help matters.
Right. Okay.
So I guess it's up to the commission if you want something smaller and temporary, or you want the actual perimeter, or if it doesn't matter.
I think it actually, from my perspective, doesn't matter. If you want to do the perimeter now, go for it. Or if you're just doing a more localized around your materials, I don't have a problem with either one of those.
Judging from the initial observations of the, I believe his name is Art, right? From Ecotech. When I saw him this morning, I didn't quite make the walkthrough, but it looks like our delineations, Brian's delineations are pretty dead on. So if of course they change or alter in any way, we don't have any problem going back out there and doing it again. But I assume they're going to remain the same, so I might as well just do them once, and then it prevents the overall. It's the most heavily trafficked road in town. It would be very difficult for us to have an excavator there without somebody noticing.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, I have no issue if you want to do, the more permanent, although it's not permanent, but the actual project-based line in first. To me, the sooner it goes in, the more protections there. I don't have a big problem with that. And Leah, would we want to make a motion on that? Because it's not really part of the approval right now. We're just giving permission.
I don't think you need to.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So that's fine. If you want to do that.
So I guess I would formally request that we continue the public hearing until, Samantha, can you give me the date, please?
20th.
April 20th.
April 20th at 7:30.
It'll be to be determined, because all continuances, we do it not a date time certain. So depending upon how many public hearings we can manipulate it depending upon how busy we are. So
Okay.
My request just to that date.
Yep.
And I will provide a written request to staff tomorrow.
Sounds good. All right. Do I have a motion for continuance?
Motion to continue to April 20th, if you can hear me.
I can now.
Second.
Thank you. Then we got a second. Do a roll call vote. Patrick?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Motion carries. So we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you very much.
If there's any comments from the commission in the interim between the two, if you don't mind emailing us, if there's anything specific that the commission is looking for as far as vegetation is concerned, while we're kind of going through the alternative approaches. So
Yep.
We're not kind of flying blind and coming back next week and, oh, well, that's not what I looked for. So if there's something in the back of your minds that you're looking for, send it over to us, please, and let us digest it and see if we can make it work.
Right. Yeah. If we have any questions, we can't do any deliberation or any other kind of actions outside the public hearing. However, if we have questions or anything else, I think we'll be happy to forward them.
Yeah, not directly to me, of course.
Yep.
Through the department.
Yep. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. All right. All right. Now, we're getting a little bit behind here. All right. Next hearing. Pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw and the Grafton Stormwater Management Bylaw, Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon a notice of intent application for Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw permit and application for stormwater management permit for a property redevelopment to construct residential and retail buildings at 8 and 100 Pine Street in Grafton. And who is here for that?
April Dorosky with Time Bond. And
Jean Christie with Time Bond.
All right, you're up.
and we sent some slides to Leah. Excellent. So
Great.
happy to finally be on board here. Gina and I are here to talk on behalf of GSX ODG about the Village at Grafton Woods development project. And with that, we can continue. In terms of project need and benefit, this is a redevelopment of a portion of the former Grafton State Hospital to a transit-oriented mixed-use development. The existing buildings of the former Grafton State Hospital are vacant at the time. Right now, this development would support commuters using the Grafton MTBA commuter rail, which is located just down the street to the southwest, easily within walking distance. And based on the North Grafton Transit Village Master Plan, there is demand for market rate and affordable rental housing. This is a really opportune area for housing because of the proximity to the MTBA station just down the street. Next slide. In terms of the project location and existing environment, the majority of the project is really located at 8 Pine Street, and that is the parcel outlined in yellow on the left or west side of that snippet there. That parcel right now includes vacant buildings, forested upland areas, and a portion of BVW along the southern portion there. It's shown in green. There is an intermittent stream that flows through. It flows to the south and into another BVW area. The project site is about 8.1 acres, and that is outlined in red. Like I mentioned, primarily within that 8 Pine Street area, with some connections to the adjacent street, and also minimal work going to the parcel to the east. Just wanted to emphasize that there is no work proposed within the 25-foot no disturbance zone. The original plans had extended the development design into the parcel further to the south, but after the delineation, it was realized that the wetlands were more extensive than originally thought. And so really to minimize impacts, but also allow for the design to be expanded to what was needed. The limits of work really just hug that 25-foot no disturbance zone, and you'll see snippets of the plans. We have erosion controls along that 25-foot no disturb zone.
Hi, everyone. I don't know if the commission was involved with any of the RFP. If you're able to see any of the proposals that were solicited by the town for this redevelopment. It was about a year ago. Did you see any of that?
I knew a little bit about
Okay.
it, but I didn't really see anything.
Okay, I'll give you a kind of a little bit of a bigger backstory to how this happened. So a couple years ago, the state, the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance, subdivided off this 8.8 acre parcel and conveyed it to the town. And the town's goal was to redevelop those 3 buildings on that 8 acres to a mixed use transit-oriented development. And the planning department had developed a zoning bylaw section for this development. They solicited RFPs for that redevelopment, and that's how GSX ODG got involved. So that they were selected as the, I don't want to say winner, but they were granted the opportunity to redevelop the site. So what that proposal was very similar to what we're going to present tonight. So I just wanted to make sure everybody had that backstory about how this is happening. We can jump back to the presentation, and I'll get back on track now.
No worries. I was just trying to provide a little context.
Yeah, actually, if you just wanted to pause there.
Sure.
Yeah, this area to the right of the blue outline is our 8 acres. The area to the right is owned by the state of Massachusetts. It's operated by Job Corps right now. We have been coordinating and we've been working with Job Corps quite a bit on the site because we've been doing some early environmental and HBMA work on the buildings. So they've been granting us access, and we've been working with them to keep them apprised of how the project's going. We are working with DCAM to reroute some of the infrastructure stuff, which I can talk about next if we want to jump back to the presentation. Okay, so back to the task at hand. You can see here, this is the existing conditions plan. Now we've rotated it so that north is to the plan left. You can see the wetland area in a little more detail on the right-hand side. That's the south end of the parcel. The buildings are currently located outside of the 100-foot buffer zone, and those are, we do plan to completely demolish and abate those buildings. There's an existing access drive from Pine Street at Centennial Boulevard that goes through the site and then goes into the DCAM property or into the Job Corps property. That's a secondary access that they use intermittently when they have some deliveries for kitchen equipment and such. So you'll see as we go through the plans that we're trying to maintain that access so that Job Corps doesn't have any disturbance in their functionality. Next slide. So what we're looking to do is, in a standard construction sequencing type, we would install our erosion and sediment control barriers. Building demolition will happen early. And that's going to, that's not entirely worked out yet, but that will likely be separate from the rest of the site work that's going to happen. It's going to be fenced and enclosed because of asbestos and other HBMA issues. So that's expected to start in May of this year, maybe probably June. Following that, we would look more to the site work, doing some of the clearing and grubbing, installing perimeter security fencing, and again, the erosion and sediment controls. And then the actual project is the development of a 316 unit residential building. 25% of those units will be affordable. And that's in accordance with the regulations from the planning department. Just south, and that's on the north side of the property. And I'll show you a plan in a moment. On the south side of the property, proximate to the wetland area, is our 2-story retail village. That will have, convenience retail, restaurant, coffee shop type stuff, things that will, I lost the word, make the residential use better, be helpful for them. I can't think of the word, I'm sorry.
Enhance.
Yes, thank you. Support that residential piece. And then we'll also be, provide access to the MBTA station further south. Both buildings will have their own dedicated parking areas. We are proposing parking structures versus, large lots because we don't have that much room. And then again, access will be from the intersection of Pine Street and Centennial Drive. You will be able to drive around the whole development to get to the parking garages with a secondary access for the retail, which I can talk about in a moment. And then, we are proposing our standard slew of utilities. I'm sorry. Next slide. So under proposed conditions, what we have shown on this sheet is really just the work that's proposed proximate to the wetlands. On the left-hand side, you can see that gray shaded structure is our residential building. It's got multiple wings so that everybody gets daylight. And then there's a parking structure behind that. On the center of the page is the retail space and the parking structure. And again, that parking has a 2-level structure. They're separate. They're not interconnected. So one's a surface lot below, servicing kind of the ground floor of the retail building. The upper level services obviously the top level of the retail building, and they're accessed from different locations. And the reason we did that was because we wanted to also provide overflow parking to the MBTA station. That was something that we had proposed in the proposal to the town, a year ago, that we can provide with a parking structure like this. We can provide overflow parking. We understand that it's, there's a need for it. So that's what this lower level is kind of intended for. During the day, overflow parking from the rail station, and then your retail pieces on the top would be accessed from the parking deck through the the main drive to the facility. So under proposed conditions, there are components within the buffer zone include, and April, if I'm stealing your thunder, I'm sorry, the building, roadway, the parking structure, as well as an infiltration basin on the right-hand side. You can go to the next slide. And that leads me into talking about stormwater. So as a side note, we're still under review with the planning board, and Graves Engineering has issued their initial round of peer review comments, which included a review of the stormwater management report as it complies with the Massachusetts stormwater standards, not the entire stormwater management permit. So I think that's going to happen as well. But to give you a quick overview of what the stormwater system looks like, we are collecting stormwater generally, from paved areas with deep sump-hooded catch basins. Parking structures require a specific oil grit separator, just because there tends to be a large accumulation of sand in parking structures. We're also using Storm Scepter proprietary treatment devices to treat your water quality volumes. But I think that the biggest features are the infiltration systems. So we're using a combination of subsurface infiltration systems, which primarily take runoff from the proposed roofs and directly recharge that along the front of the residential buildings, along the Pine Street side, within the front setback area, because we have quite a large 50-foot setback that we need to comply with for the building. And then because we couldn't put subsurface infiltration under our parking structure, we did end up with a surface basin in the far south side of the project. And if you flip back, I can again point out a couple of those features. So you can look at on the left-hand side, you can see some of those really black boxes. They're not that dark when you actually zoom in on it, but those are subsurface infiltration systems. There's 4 of them along the residential building. And then again, on the right-hand side of the retail building, there's an infiltration basin. So all of those systems have outlet control features that will discharge runoff to the wetland during various storm events, in compliance with the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook. So we can keep going a couple more if you'd like. Thank you. So again, this is our proposed watershed map. Again, the buildings are all being recharged. We are increasing impervious considerably, so we did have to manage quite a bit of stormwater. And I think our basin's pretty typical in design, nothing super fancy about it. I know the question will come up about LID features. The outside spaces that we have available for residents is kind of limited. So we wanted to really maximize what they can use that space for. So we didn't want to take it up with too many, bioretention areas and things like that. But one thing that we're able to include is, and it's probably really hard to see it, but along the north side of the residential building, we needed to be able to provide a fire lane around that. And we didn't want to pave the whole 20-foot width because it wouldn't be used occasionally. So what we did was we are including an 8-foot wide walking path, but it's enclosed or included in a 20-foot wide reinforced turf instead of pavement to increase, what's going into the grass, or what looks like grass, at least what rainwater can actually infiltrate, and to avoid that big expanse of pavement. So that is something that we are doing. I'm going to flip to the next one. I think this is April's.
All right, back to talk about plants a little bit. Thanks, Jane. Great summary. In terms of site restoration, per the bylaw, we're just planning on installing native species within the 100-foot buffer zone. We have a list of landscaping species listed in the bottom left of that sheet, and you can see the different types of drawn areas, whether they're trees, shrubs, there's areas of ground cover and lawn and conservation seed mix, and that's what will be planted where there is, areas around the parking structures, stormwater basins that are within the 100-foot buffer zone. Next slide. And just to talk about the buffer zone a little bit more, we are impacting about 1 acre of buffer zone next to that vegetated wetland that has a stream within it. But as I mentioned, we're staying outside of that 25-foot no disturbance zone and restoring with native species where it's available. In terms of the performance standards for the bylaw, we went through them and believe that we've met all the performance standards and really considered it as much as possible to protect the wetland areas while also meeting the project goals. So we're not requesting a waiver at this time. And if I think you can go to the next slide. Yeah, if the commission has any more questions, we are happy to take them.
Oops, sorry. So I have a couple quick questions up front, and then I'll go to the other commissioners. You talked a little bit about, the fire lane and using a reinforced turf as kind of one LID gesture. Did you look into anything else as far as porous pavement? You indicated that you couldn't put infiltration underneath your lower level of your parking deck. I don't get that. I don't understand why you couldn't. That seems like a very efficient use. But did you consider anything else? Reuse, green roofs, blue roofs, or anything else?
Well, I think, let's see, I'll keep myself organized. In terms of like porous pavement, we did consider it initially. Unfortunately, the traffic volumes are a little too high to use it for this application according to the handbook. So we did need to exclude that. We don't have a whole lot of pavement on the project. Pavement that's going to receive direct runoff or direct rainfall. So, that one roadway is what's having all the traffic on it. So unfortunately, we couldn't put it there. As far as what's going on in the roof. So the roof is solar ready. That's one part of, I think, the project. And I'm not sure if it was a funding thing or if it was part of the RFP, but the roof needed to be prepped for solar. So I think that's part of the development. So there's no other green roof type features. As far as the parking, the multi-level parking deck goes, it was, we could design a subsurface infiltration system under the parking deck, but you can't access it well enough with maintenance vehicles. And if it ever failed, it's hard to recreate underneath an existing concrete parking structure. So that was the reason we couldn't do it. We fought for it. We tried really hard. I wanted to because it worked great. But, after we kind of vetted that through the rest of the project team, that was excluded.
You're on mute, Sandy.
Oh, thank you for that. Seems a little, short-sighted because I think it would be a more efficient design, and you can always, if you have issues with consideration of maintenance and other things, there's always other ways to do things and be creative in how you do it. So, but that's fine. I appreciate the responses. So I'll go to the other commission members. Patrick?
I don't think I have anything else specific at this time.
Okay. And John?
No, I have nothing at the moment.
All right. So I will open it up to the public. If anyone has any comments or questions, please, add it to the chat feature. Make sure you address it to all participants, so that we can see it. As far as Leah, I know we have a few things that are still outstanding. Other than the peer review is underway. Has Ecotech also done their peer review?
I did not send this one to Ecotech. If the commission feels the need, I can do so.
And yeah, is it fairly straightforward or as far as the location of the wetlands?
That's how I felt.
Okay. Oh, that's fine. I mean, if you had the opportunity to go out and look at it, I'm all set with that. And the status of of Graves is just there reviewing the updated plans.
Yeah, so I talked to Jeff, and he had mentioned that there was already substantial comments to address for planning. So he
Okay.
was going to wait for that revised set before looking at stuff specific for the commission.
Okay. And we also don't have DEP number.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Anything else as far as other comments that you have or questions?
Yeah. So we do need to go a little bit into the weeds on this one with regards to fees, just because it's not your traditional project. So I wanted to make sure that staff's interpretation of fees agreed with the commission's interpretation. So I have a few questions. One is for their NOI, they picked category 3B, and they paid a quantity of 1 for 3B. And that is construction of each building for any commercial, industrial, institutional, or apartment, condominium, townhouse type development. And then it's inclusive of the work associated with those buildings. I didn't know if the commission interpreted this as a fee needing to be paid one time or 2 times, because we have the 2 buildings, the residential building and the commercial building. The wording on the category is a little bit bizarre. It's construction of each building for any commercial, housing, etc. So I wanted your take on that one. I can pull up the plan for reference if that's helpful.
Okay. I always thought it was for. Yeah, so you basically have commercial building and residential buildings, correct?
Yes. So just because the wording in the category is construction of each.
Yep. No,
So
I always, yeah, it's occurrence in each. So I would think that you would have to do for each.
So times 2.
Yes.
Okay.
I will say that only the residential building is within the 100-foot buffer zone, but the parking for retail is within
Oh,
the
you're right.
100-foot buffer zone. So we kind of have one building in there and then appurtenances, including the parking and stormwater basin that are
That's a
within the
good
100-foot
point.
buffer zone. So I think that was the original reason why we had decided it to just be counted as one.
No,
So,
you
Leah,
make a good point.
Yeah, Leah, do you traditionally just look at each location within the resource area, or is it the project based? I've always done things project based.
For the NOI fees, it's anything within the jurisdiction.
Okay.
For stormwater, it's all inclusive. So ignore my question. Sorry about that. I see the way we had worked that through before. Disregard that one.
Okay.
The other one was the wetlands bylaw application. They paid 1 multifamily dwelling unit. Our regulations expand upon that category to say that it's 100 per dwelling unit. The building is going to be 4 units high. It was my interpretation that the intention of the fee being per dwelling unit would be for units that, vary in width, a larger footprint, not stacked on top of each other. So I had them submit the 1 iteration of that fee category versus 4. But I wanted you guys' take on that.
Okay. And this is from the bylaw.
Yes, and it's for the corner of the residential building right here.
Okay. And when you say unit, you're talking, what do you mean?
So the fee category is just listed as multi-family dwelling unit. And then in the regulations, it expands upon it to say that it's $100 per dwelling unit, which I took to mean like per apartment.
Right. Yeah, that's the way I would have read it.
But these are, vertically on top of each other versus horizontally, causing additional disturbance, which is what the bylaw is concerned about.
Right. So the intent behind of it, because it's vertical, it's on top. It's really just one. I get it. As opposed to the height of the building with the 4 levels, and that wouldn't be 4, it would be 1.
Right. I just wanted to make sure you guys agreed with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a problem. Patrick or John, do you have an issue with that kind of? To me, it's the footprint. I would agree with that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'd agree that it's the footprint. The building department may chase you for additional stuff, but for the wetlands and for Conscom, I think it would be the footprint.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Sounds good.
Okay. And just the last one was also under our bylaw. We have another category called Roadways and Infrastructure. They selected this ×2 for the 2 access roads. So you have the one access road is here between the 2 buildings. The other is over here.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know if the commission considers the basin like inclusive with that access road, or if it needs to be in addition to, because it's worded roadways and infrastructure.
It's an and. I would say it's included.
Okay, so them submitting that fee ×2 is accurate.
Yep.
Okay.
Was that
And
it?
the only other, that's it for fees. The only other things I was going to mention is that we are waiting on a sign off from the owners of 100 Pine for the bit of work that does need to occur over there, as well as acreage calculations on their proposed phasing plan.
Okay.
That's all I have.
All right. So I will go around to the commission. John, any other questions?
No.
Patrick, any other questions?
Nope, nothing right now.
And I don't, since we don't have the DEP number and we're still waiting on some of the peer reviews, I would suggest a continuance. Obviously, that's up to your purview. So it's also up to you if you'd like to go to our next hearing, which is in 2 weeks, or do you want to go to the May hearing?
Jean, what do you think's appropriate?
I of course don't want to drag this out forever. I think we're going to be dependent on Graves' engineering review, which is also relying on us revising our stuff for planning board and getting back to them. So can we conditionally put it on the agenda for 2 weeks? And then because the applicant's not here, I can't completely speak for him or them. Just to get their thoughts about it. And then if we have to, we could request a continuance to the next meeting if they say, don't bother.
And that's fine. It's just, sometimes, again, it's up to you. And if you thought it would take a few weeks, then go ahead and do it. But we have no problem doing it in 2 weeks. And if you request a continuance ahead of time, so be it.
Let's do that. I think that's probably.
And just to let you know, tonight was a time certain, which we didn't meet at all, but that's okay. The next one as a continuance, we group all the continuances together, so we're a little bit more flexible when we're dealing with continuances. But okay. All right, so we have a request for continuance. Do I have a motion for continuance?
Motion to continue to the next meeting on April 20th.
Second.
All right, I'll do a roll call. Patrick?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
I am also a yes. The The continuance is approved. All right. Thank you very much. See you in a
Great.
couple weeks, maybe.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Have
Yep.
a great night.
You too.
Fine.
All right. So, Leah, we're up for now looking at continuances.
Correct.
Okay. And we only have one continuance, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, the Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon a notice of intent and application for Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw permit for the construction of an addition and in-law apartment at 7 Alana Drive.
Good evening. This is Norman Hill. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So our client now has a DEP file number, and we submitted a revised plan. And there were two things of interest, I think, to you that I'd like to point out on the revised plan. One was he changed the foundation for the proposed addition to the back line is pretty much a straight line now, where there had been a couple of indentations into the building. He sort of straightened that across the back, but it didn't get any closer to the wetland. It didn't get, but it's a slight change in the foundation of the proposed addition. And then the second change of interest to you would be we added some infiltration units to take all of the roof runoff from the proposed addition. So we delivered two of those plans to the conservation office this afternoon, and we emailed those drawings to you. You're looking at it on the screen right there. So you can see that infiltration system's on the right-hand side of the driveway. It's outside of the 25-foot zone and outside of the proposed siltation controls. When we last met, you approved a variance to allow us to do the work within the 25-foot no disturb. And that work is only proposed to stabilize a slope that is now unstable. That slope is seeing erosion. And so what they'd like to do is plant it and then cover it with stone. And that's within the 25-foot zone. So if you have, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. I didn't lose you. Did I lose you? Hello?
Sorry. Nope,
Oh,
that
sorry.
was me.
Oh.
I was just trying to
All right.
be respectful and put myself on mute. So, sorry, you didn't hear anything I had to say. So,
I
as
lost
far
it.
as this, John, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions at this time.
Patrick, any comments?
No, nothing at this time.
So as far as Lee, as far as some of your comments as far as the septic system and the breakout, has those items been addressed?
If I may speak to that, the grade above the septic system is a foot lower than the grade of the street and the sidewalk. So I was puzzled by Brian Cizurco's question of the street being in the breakout area. I surmise that what he's getting at is that the water from that septic system will percolate in all four directions, including the fifth direction of downward. And so it's going to percolate, part of that water is going to percolate towards Elena Drive, which is true of almost every septic system. I surmise that's what he's getting at. Certainly, the septic system is a foot lower than the street, so it can't break out into the street or the sidewalk.
So did you have an opportunity to ask him that question, or and
I
has
didn't.
that been addressed? Okay.
I didn't speak with Brian himself, no. But I don't know what he means. I mean, the system, the top of the system is a foot lower than the street and the sidewalk, so.
Okay. Is there anything else, Lee, as far as your comments go?
We did need to clarify, there was some discussion at one of the last hearings about possible tree removal, and I didn't know if that was still proposed as in scope or no longer proposed.
Yeah, I don't believe they're proposing to take down any trees. there were some trees that blew down in a storm this past year. I think they're still laying on the ground below that slope behind the swimming pool. But I don't believe they're proposing to take down any trees. I think Paul is listening as well. Paul, do you have a better answer to that question? No, Paul's obviously not on.
Okay.
I'm here. I'm the owner. No, we're not proposing to take any trees down in that area. We do have a dead tree off to the side, right along Danielle, that's closer to Alana, that is going to need to come down because it's dead. But other than that, there's nothing.
Anything else, Leah?
No, I just had suggested special conditions. I can read them, or whoever makes the motion can read them if you
Yeah,
desire.
they're fairly straightforward. We can do it with the motion. I'll just open it up to the public. If anyone has any comments or questions, please use the chat feature, and please address everything to all participants. One more time, anything to add, John? Anything to add, Patrick?
Nope.
All right. Seeing that, anything to add, Norman? Otherwise, we'll just take a vote and move along.
No, I'm all set. I'm all set.
Do I have a motion for this order of conditions, issuing this order of conditions?
You have to close the hearing first, I think.
No, you don't. We can do it at the same time.
Oh, okay.
So do we have a motion to close the hearing and issue the order of conditions with the special conditions as listed in the agent's report?
Yeah.
If it helps, if it helps, I'll just go through those special conditions very quickly. These are our standard conditions of sediment and erosion control barrier shown in the plan, and shall also function as the limit of disturbance. The 25-foot no disturb zone shall be preserved, with the exception of where the existing lawn near the shed encroaches into it. In this location, no disturb zone shall begin at the existing tree line. And then the no disturb zone shall have signage and a physical barrier. So those are the three conditions. Patrick, if you want to make a motion, you can do the so moved.
All right, so moved.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, we'll do roll call vote. Patrick?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. The motion passes and the order is issued. So
thank you all very much. Everybody stay well. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care.
All right.
Lose my ability to read the screen.
That's okay. Yeah, I gotta drive to New Jersey tomorrow. So.
Oh, great.
Action items. Leah, what else do we have for action items that anyone here for any action items, or can we just go right through them?
I'm honestly not sure what the two attendees are still here for. If you would like to type in the chat, and we can just start on our list in the meantime.
Okay.
If you guys want to take the minutes.
Sure.
Give them a chance to type.
Sure. So as far as the minutes go, if everyone had a chance to read it, if anyone has any comments or questions on it, please let me know. Otherwise, we can have a motion.
I'll motion to accept the March 16th meeting minutes.
Second.
Roll call vote. Patrick?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries. Okay. So, Leah, this is the continuation of the conservation land donation at Millennium Drive.
Yep.
Do you want to just take a vote so that we can do it based, and then so that upon the results of the new phase 1 assessment, and to be conducted after our town meeting vote. Do you want to just go through that?
Yeah, I talked to town council. There's 2 outstanding pieces right now. One is the title search for the property. The other is the question of whether the 21E needs to be done again or not, because the last one is outdated.
Okay.
So in talking to town council, she also reached out to the LSP that did the 21E in whatever year it was, 2000, early 2000s. They are both in agreement. Town council and the LSP are in agreement that we can go ahead and recommend accepting the land donation contingent on the results of a new 21E being conducted. However, WBDC wishes to do the new 21E after the town votes to take the land. They don't want to expend the cost and then have the town not take the land. So we can word this recommendation so that I can pass it along to the select board for the purposes of town meeting. And I would just add to it's very complex a motion to make, but I would say to take that vote upon favorable results of the title search, because that piece is still outstanding. If this motion leaves too much, in the balance, we can bring it up again at the April 20th meeting. I don't have a problem doing that and giving them more time for the title search, but the next 21E won't be done until town meeting votes to accept the land pending favorable results of a new 21E.
Right. So it's the title search stuff that's outstanding. And then as far as the 21E, that's conditional anyways. So it's really just the title. And if they're going to be if they're in the process of doing the title, we can just take no action and wait till the next meeting to see if
That's fine too. Yes.
Okay. So we'll take no action just to make the recommendation a little bit cleaner. And we're not up against any kind of deadline to have it to the selectmen, are we?
I already have it on the warrant as a placeholder, and worst case, we can always pull it off. So I think we're covered.
All right. Sounds good. So we'll take no action on that. The land use application.
We had a volunteer come forward wanting to blaze the trail at Hassanemessett Woods. She sent me this link with a type of blazing she was looking to use. So different symbols mean different things, like a right turn, a left turn. Hang on. I gotta find the right thing to show you guys. So she's looking to use this system. It's rectangles, and then different symbols mean different things, like take a right here, take a left there, where the trail starts, where the trail ends. It's following a system that the Grafton Land Trust uses, and similar colors that they use on the property they own that abuts Hassanemessett Woods. I don't have any issues with giving this project to a volunteer. I would just suggest that the commission specify that she stick to the numbered loop trail that we have there for right now. The reason being that we have offshoots from that trail that I'm not quite sure where they go. We don't have them concretely mapped, and I would hate for her to blaze a trail that sends people to private property. So I would just suggest that we allow her to do this, but with the numbered loop trail only at this time. And then we can look at additional later.
Totally sounds reasonable to me, and appreciate. So how did this volunteer come forward? Just curious.
She found our land use application, and she said this has been a goal of hers for a little while. She works with the land trust and probably did some of their blazing work, it sounds like.
Okay, and it's based on a standard, some sort of standard, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I certainly don't have any issues with it. John, any issues with this?
No issues, and I think it's great that someone's volunteering to do this.
I think it's cool. Patrick,
No, yeah, it sounds good.
does this need a motion?
Sure.
All right, can I have a motion to approve this? I know I'm having also a land use application.
I'll motion to approve the application in question, and specifically to stick with the number loop trail in Hassanamessa Woods.
Second.
Roll call, Patrick,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
I'm a yes, so that that's approved. Okay. Certificate of compliance for 136 McGill Drive. It's partial. Everything's all set, Leah.
Correct.
Do I have a motion to issue a partial certificate of compliance for 136 McGill Drive?
If I can just butt in for 1 second, it's going to be two partials because there are two subdivision orders that this fell under.
Okay. So we can do it in the same motion. It just has to list both of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll motion to issue the partial certificates of compliance for both of the requests at 136 McGill Drive.
Sounds good. Roll call, Patrick. Oh, I'm sorry. John, you were right. You seconded it. So thank you.
Oh.
So we have a motion and a second. Patrick, roll call.
Yes.
John,
Yes.
get a little ahead of myself. I'm a yes. The motion passes. Okay. It is. It's getting late, and I got a long day tomorrow. So
It's been a long year.
Yeah.
as I said to someone today, when I was like, yeah, it's been a long day, a long week. Oh, yeah, hell, a long year. So.
Last 12 months or so. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Certificate of compliance for 64 Waterville Street. Looks all set there, Leah.
Correct. I had the as-built reviewed by Graves as well. This was for the substation for National Grid.
Oh, cool.
They're all
Okay.
set. Everything's stable, and Jeff Walsh gave his sign off as well.
Sounds good. Thank you. Can I have a motion on that?
I'll motion to issue the certificate of compliance for 64 Waterville Street.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Roll call, Patrick.
Yes.
John,
Yes.
I'm a yes. The motion carries. Anything else?
Yeah, one more thing. we need to take a vote to reissue new originals for the Ridings subdivision. They misplaced their original order and associated bylaw permits. And usually when this happens, we have the commission take a formal vote before we send out a new one.
Sounds good. Do I have a motion?
Motion to issue no originals for the Riding subdivision.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Roll call, Patrick.
Yes.
John,
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries. We have just one more motion, correct?
Yeah, your favorite one.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
John,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Leah,
Yes.
Samantha. I'm a yes. Motion carries. Everyone can now go to bed.